Welcome to the 2020 SRT Grand Cherokee by Jeep. This is Mopar's answer to the sport SUV class. Now, other vehicles that we have as rivals are the BMW X5 58M Sport, the GLE, is it GLE? Whatever the ML used to be, the 43 AMG, and maybe a Range Rover Sport supercharged. It's quite apparent that this car isn't a direct competitor to those cars. Now, that's not because this car isn't as sophisticated as those, that this is the American of the party. It's more to do with what the focus of this car is. Now, those cars, they have a level of sophistication to them, a Range Rover, a BMW, a Mercedes, no German, European kind of feel. This is way more track or speed oriented. I don't know what the proper wording would be, but it's quite apparent that SRT wanted this car to be an experience for driving. Do a quick pull here. We're in first gear. Yeah, it pulls like a freight train, man. So let's talk about the power plant in this car. We have a 6.4 liter Hemi V8 all-American horsepower, baby. Save the V8s. Putting down about 475 horsepower and about 470 pound-feet of torque, and that's made it to a 8-speed automatic transmission. Now, I gotta say that this automatic transmission in this car is where the real genius is. That and the launch control. Those two factors, they make this car feel a lot quicker than what the stats say. So right now we're cruising along in eco mode, which deactivates half your cylinders, by the way, if you're worried about the gas. The transmission is actually quite smooth. You won't be able to tell when it actually shifts gears. It's just like a normal automatic. But now if I were to put the shift knob into S mode by flick to the left, it shuts down the eco mode, so that gives back all your cylinders, and it sharpens up the transmission. Now you can take it a step further, and with the knob in the center console area, you can put it into track mode, which we are now, and the shifts become even quicker. So listen to this. That's pretty quick. I would say that's on par with all modern automatics. And I've driven previous SRTs and they were nowhere near this fast. Alright, so for our launch control sequence, all we gotta do is pop it into track mode here. Make sure the launch button is on. This brings up our SRT performance pages. We're gonna go under race options. Make sure, yeah, launch control is activated. And then the rest of it goes onto the cluster. We just gotta follow what it says. It says apply brake pressure, which we did. And now it says launch enabled. And we just hold down our throttle and we're ready to go. Yeah, that is quick. Oh my god. Hey, the launch control in this car is really crazy. It actually gives you that gut feeling like when you're going on a roller coaster. It feels like you're really being propelled backwards into your seat. I did the launch control a couple of times and I didn't have my bag stowed properly, and it just went flying off the seat. It's actually crazy what this car will do in the launch control. So let's talk about the handling of this car. Now, for a behemoth of this size, it actually handles quite well. Now, like I was saying earlier, SRT really made sure that this car still felt like a driver's car. You wouldn't expect XUVs to handle like this. I think ever since the Range Rover SVR came out, there was a big shift in the SUVs that they actually handled better. Now, if you don't know, the SVR was one of the first SUVs to put down a crazy lap time at the Nürburgring. Now, if you put the car into track mode, it puts the suspension as well into track mode. And what that does is it actually really stiffens it up. I would say for normal daily use, just leaving it in sport mode is fine because it actually does get quite bumpy. But I would say the input of the steering is actually quite direct. Wherever you point it, that's where the car ends up going. So we got a pretty nice turn here. About 113 kilometers. No problem. I could push it even further if I wanted to. So it is very confidence inspiring. But for normal use, I would say sport is more than enough, really. Because you got a good balance of enough stiffness and enough comfort for everyday use. And now if we put into auto, everything becomes quiet. And if I put the transmission into just drive, it's even more quiet. And we have 380 millimeter front rotors, and it stops. There's almost no use scenario where you're actually gonna have to slam on the brakes unless you're going to a track or you're doing extremely high speeds. And I think the real key here is that they want to make it such a performance-oriented car, or SUV I should say, that you wouldn't miss your sports car that you keep for summer if you're living in climates like here in Canada, where half the year you actually have to use an all-wheel drive car or something like that. Let's talk about the exhaust notes of this vehicle. We have a 6.4 liter Hemi V8. Of course, it's gonna sound crazy, right? And actually, for a stock exhaust system, it is quite loud from the factory. So if we put into track here, that's pretty loud. And from what I can tell, there's no sound that's being pumped into the vehicle right now. I would say my favorite part of the exhaust system is sometimes between the shifts you get this little crackle, and it sounds really cool actually. I also like just cruising around in this car, just like low RPM, you hear that bellow like that. I kind of like that, I don't know why. Something weird that I noticed when I had the car in park and both neutral, if I tried to rev the car, for some reason it would hang the revs. It was like it would go up to 4,000 RPM, but then it would just kind of stay there, and it just sounds really weird. I think I got a clip of it. So if you're ever trying to rev this car at a car show or trying to impress somebody, I wouldn't do it. So right away, my first impressions while walking up to this vehicle and seeing it for the first time was I noticed how muscular and brawny this car actually looks. It really gives it a muscle car feel. I have to say that this is probably my favorite generation of the Cherokee, and I have to say my favorite part of it is probably the lights. It just really makes it look really menacing, and I would say that my favorite body feature is actually the nostrils in the hood, which I can see as I'm driving right now, and it just gives you that it's all a part of the experience, really. But overall, the design of this vehicle is actually really nice all the way around. Like I said, it's my favorite generation of the Cherokee. No weird design cues or anything. The proportions are all right. I try to get it from every angle to show that. And I would say it has a really nice wheel fitment as well, which is actually pretty important to me, because the worst thing is when you have a wider vehicle, but then you have these wheels which are really tucked in. So they did well with that. I think the only gripe that I have with the styling would be with the interior. And that's not because of the materials they used. It actually feels very premium and very luxury. We got leather wrapped everything. Our armrest is leather. The side bolstering is leather here, with the inserts which are suede, and it's a very nice suede. We got carbon fiber trim here on the side. The only gripe that I have is from the design point. I've driven a few SRTs now, and they all look the same from the inside. There's not much difference between them. I would wish that they would have something that's a little bit more special to the Cherokee, or I don't know, something that would make it look a little bit different, you know? So one thing I've noticed for Mopar vehicles is that there's a big emphasis on the touchscreen. Now, almost everything can be controlled within the screen, especially all your SRT sport functions. Everything is very intuitive. So we have all our climate control, our ventilated, heated seats, heated steering wheel, Wi-Fi hotspot, and driven any other Mopar vehicle, it'll feel completely normal to you. So the seats in this vehicle are actually quite comfortable. I find that there's a good balance between sport bolstering. Now that's when you're cornering really hard, how much it holds you into the seat, and there's a good balance between that and comfort for long distance drive. So a cool feature we have is a 0 to 60 timer. Let's just give it a test here. So I think the experience of this car is actually quite unique for an SUV, because it's not that they just put a big engine into this car and they didn't touch anything else about it. They really thought about how the weight this car would handle, and I think just everything put together, it just all comes together really nicely in a nice package. Now the fact that there's actually a Trackhawk which has a 700 horsepower Hellcat engine in it, it's just crazy, because I feel like this already is at the height of what it can be, but I guess just more power is the answer. Now the whole point of this vehicle is about having a driver focused experience while having the practicality of what an SUV does for you. Now, did they actually accomplish that? 100% yes. Like I said earlier, with the different drive modes that you have, like in comfort, you have these slow shifts, the suspension has good dampening, but then when you just give it a flick, you go into track mode, everything changes, and everything just comes together nicely, like from the design cues to the engine, the transmission, everything comes together to give you that, I guess, muscle car feeling, but in the new age, the modern version of what a muscle car can be, but in an SUV. So it hits so many different things, but it does it very well, is what I'm trying to say. So I would say the perfect demographic for this car is somebody who lives in a snowy climate, who can't drive their rear-wheel drive sports car, and they need something, they just always have that itch to just drive something fast. I'm kind of like that, so I completely understand what this vehicle does and where its place in the market actually is. Or you could just want a really fast SUV. I mean, I guess you could fall under that category as well. I would just say that the gas is a little bit poor on this, but I mean, there's cylinder deactivation.